Think for a moment. Imagine waking up one day and realizing that the conversations that once excited you now feel empty, repetitive, almost painfully superficial. Imagine entering a room full of people and feeling more alone than when you are by yourself. What if this discomfort is not a flaw in you, but a consequence of seeing too clearly? Today we will explore a harsh and unsettling idea: why many highly intelligent people slowly abandon social life, not out of arrogance or bitterness, but out of lucidity. And more importantly, what Schopenhauer understood about human nature that most people never dare to face. Stay with me, because the final insight we will uncover is the most uncomfortable and powerful of all, and it can completely change how you understand solitude, intelligence, and your place in the world. This channel exists for those who seek deeper reflection. Here we explore timeless wisdom and modern psychology to understand human behavior, inner conflict, and personal growth. If these ideas resonate with you, take a moment to subscribe, leave a like, share this video, and write your thoughts in the comments. What we are about to reveal may transform the way you see relationships, society, and even yourself. Arthur Schopenhauer, one of the most brutally honest philosophers in history, believed that most human suffering is rooted in social illusion. According to him, the average person seeks constant distraction, validation, and noise to avoid facing their own inner emptiness. Intelligent individuals, however, are cursed and gifted with awareness. They see through appearances. They perceive contradictions. They notice patterns others ignore, and this awareness slowly creates distance. Schopenhauer argued that the more a person understands the world, the less they feel at home in it. Social interactions are often built on unspoken rules of conformity. People expect agreement, emotional reassurance, and shared illusions, but the intelligent mind struggles to pretend. It becomes exhausted by conversations that revolve around status, gossip, trivial ambitions, and shallow optimism. Over time, withdrawal becomes not a rejection of others, but an act of self-preservation. Psychology supports this view in unsettling ways. Studies on cognitive depth and sensitivity show that highly intelligent individuals tend to process information more intensely. They reflect longer, question more deeply, and feel contradictions more sharply. This makes casual social interaction draining. What others experience as relaxing conversation feels to them like mental friction. Have you ever left a social gathering feeling more tired than fulfilled? That exhaustion is not physical, it is existential. Schopenhauer believed that society rewards mediocrity because it is comfortable. Those who challenge norms, who question shared beliefs, create discomfort. As a result, intelligent people often feel pressure to simplify themselves, to hide their thoughts, to pretend interest in things that feel meaningless to them. Eventually, many stop trying. Solitude becomes a refuge where they can think freely, without distortion. But here is the paradox. Humans are social by nature, yet the more one understands humans, the more difficult it becomes to be among them. Schopenhauer described this as a tragic tension. The intelligent individual longs for connection, but not at the cost of self-betrayal. They do not want many connections, only real ones, and those are rare. This raises an uncomfortable question for you. Do you sometimes feel misunderstood? Not because you fail to explain yourself, but because others are not willing to see beyond their comfort. Do you ever sense that you are alone in a crowd, watching conversations happen on a level that no longer satisfies your inner depth? Schopenhauer warned that intelligence does not bring happiness, it brings clarity, and clarity often reveals truths that are difficult to live with. One of those truths is that most relationships are transactional, driven by need, fear of loneliness, or social expectation. When you no longer need these things, the structure collapses. Yet this is not the end of the story. Withdrawal is not necessarily isolation. There is a profound difference. Solitude can be fertile ground for creativity, self-knowledge, and inner freedom. Many of history's greatest thinkers, artists, and innovators lived largely alone, not because they hated people, but because they loved truth more than comfort. Before we continue, reflect on this. Are you distancing yourself from others because you are broken, or because you are awakening to something deeper? And what if solitude is not a punishment, but a threshold? If you want me to continue to the next part, where we will explore how modern society amplifies this phenomenon, and why digital connection makes intelligent loneliness even sharper, say continue, or proceed. Modern society intensifies everything Schopenhauer warned about. In the past, social pressure existed mainly in physical spaces. Today, it follows you everywhere. Screens never sleep. Opinions are constant. Performances are rewarded. And for the intelligent mind, this environment becomes almost unbearable. Social life is no longer just about being with others. It is about being visible, agreeable, and endlessly responsive. Silence is interpreted as absence. Depth is mistaken for negativity. Reflection is seen as weakness. Highly intelligent people often sense that modern social life is not built for truth, but for stimulation. Conversations are shorter. Attention is fragmented. People speak not to understand, but to be seen. This creates a profound mismatch. The intelligent mind seeks coherence, meaning, and depth, while modern social structures thrive on speed, novelty, and surface-level emotion. Over time, this mismatch creates alienation. Digital connection promises closeness, but often delivers the opposite. You are surrounded by voices, yet rarely heard. You are exposed to countless opinions, yet meaningful dialogue becomes rare. For someone with depth, this constant noise does not feel like connection. It feels like erosion. Each interaction takes something, instead of giving something back. Withdrawal then becomes an act of mental hygiene. Psychologically, this aligns with what researchers call cognitive overstimulation. Intelligent individuals tend to be more sensitive to information overload. They do not merely consume content. They analyze it, question it, integrate it. Social media, group chats, and endless debates demand emotional reactions without allowing time for reflection. The result is chronic fatigue, not of the body, but of the mind. Schopenhauer believed that most people fear solitude because it forces them to confront themselves. Intelligent people, on the other hand, often fear society because it forces them to abandon themselves. This distinction is crucial. Solitude allows alignment between thought and being. Social life, as structured today, often demands fragmentation. You must be one person privately and another publicly. Over time, this split becomes unbearable. There is also a moral dimension to this withdrawal. Intelligent individuals tend to notice hypocrisy more quickly. They see how moral values shift depending on convenience, how outrage is selective, how empathy is performative. Being constantly exposed to this creates quiet disillusionment. Not anger, not hatred, but a deep tiredness of pretending that contradictions do not exist. Ask yourself something honestly. How often do you remain silent? Not because you have nothing to say, but because you know saying it will change nothing. How often do you nod in agreement simply to avoid the emotional labor of explaining a complex truth to someone who does not want to hear it? Each time this happens, a small distance grows between you and others. Schopenhauer argued that intelligence sharpens perception, and sharp perception cuts. You begin to see patterns of behavior that repeat endlessly. The same conflicts, the same illusions, the same emotional loops. Once you see them, it becomes difficult to unsee them, and participating in them starts to feel pointless. This does not mean intelligent people believe they are superior. On the contrary, many feel deeply flawed because they cannot adapt easily. They wonder if something is wrong with them. Why do others seem so comfortable with what feels empty to them? Why does society reward noise over insight? These questions often lead inward, not outward. Solitude then becomes a space of repair, a place where thoughts can unfold fully without interruption, where questions are allowed to remain unanswered, where identity is not shaped by reaction, but by reflection. In solitude, the intelligent individual is not lonely, they are whole. But here comes the uncomfortable truth. Withdrawal has a cost. The longer one stays away, the harder it becomes to return. Social muscles weaken. Tolerance for superficiality decreases further. And a quiet fear emerges. What if meaningful connection is truly rare, not just difficult to find? This is where Schopenhauer's insight becomes most disturbing. He suggested that suffering is not evenly distributed. Those who see more suffer more, not because life is cruel to them specifically, but because they are more aware of its nature. Ignorance protects, awareness exposes, yet awareness also liberates. The intelligent individual who embraces solitude consciously, rather than resentfully, can transform it into strength. The question is not whether you will withdraw, but why. Are you escaping, or are you choosing? Think carefully about this before we move on. Is your distance from others a wound, or is it a boundary? And what would happen if you stopped judging yourself for needing less instead of more? Arthur Schopenhauer pushed this reflection further than most thinkers dared. He believed that the ultimate reason intelligent people distance themselves from social life is not disappointment with others, but disillusionment with the very structure of human desire. According to him, humans are driven less by truth and more by comfort, less by understanding and more by avoidance. Once you truly grasp this, social life no longer feels like a meeting of minds, but a theater of mutual distraction. For the intelligent individual, this realization is deeply unsettling. You begin to notice that many conversations are not about exchanging ideas, but about reinforcing identities. People speak to confirm who they believe they are, not to discover what might be true. When you challenge these narratives, even gently, you are perceived as a threat. Over time, you learn that honesty often isolates more than silence. Arthur Schopenhauer argued that most people seek others not for companionship, but for relief from boredom and inner discomfort. Social interaction becomes a tool to escape oneself. Intelligent people, however, tend to tolerate silence better. They can sit with their own thoughts. And because of that, they see something others avoid. How much of social life is built on unconscious fear? This creates a painful asymmetry. The intelligent person enters social spaces seeking depth, meaning, or genuine exchange. Others enter seeking validation, reassurance, or entertainment. Neither side is wrong, but they are incompatible. When these expectations clash repeatedly, withdrawal feels inevitable. Psychologically, this aligns with the concept of existential awareness. Individuals with higher cognitive and emotional depth tend to confront questions others suppress. Questions about mortality, meaning, suffering, and responsibility. These themes are rarely welcome in casual social settings. They disrupt the flow. They make people uncomfortable. So, the intelligent individual learns to censor themselves or leave. But censoring oneself comes at a cost. Each unspoken thought, each suppressed insight creates internal tension. Over time, this tension becomes heavier than loneliness. Solitude, then, is chosen not because it is ideal, but because it is honest. There is also the issue of emotional honesty. Intelligent people often perceive emotional manipulation more clearly. They notice passive aggression, performative empathy, and hidden agendas. While others may unconsciously participate in these dynamics, the intelligent mind resists them. This resistance creates friction. Relationships become strained not because of conflict, but because of clarity. Ask yourself this: have you ever felt that maintaining certain relationships required you to dull your perception, to ignore what you clearly saw? Have you ever sensed that harmony was preserved only by mutual denial? For many intelligent individuals, this realization marks a turning point. They begin to choose fewer relationships but deeper ones, and sometimes none at all. Schopenhauer believed that suffering increases with awareness. The more you understand human nature, the less romantic it becomes. You see how often kindness is conditional, how love is mixed with possession, how morality bends under pressure. This does not make you cynical. It makes you cautious. And caution is often mistaken for coldness. Yet there is something profoundly ethical about this withdrawal. It is a refusal to participate in falsehood, a refusal to live on borrowed beliefs. Intelligent solitude is not antisocial. It is selective. It is the decision to preserve inner coherence over external approval. However, this path is not without danger. Extended solitude can harden into detachment. Reflection can turn into rumination. Clarity can become isolation if not balanced with compassion. Schopenhauer himself struggled with this tension. He understood solitude as both sanctuary and burden. This leads us to the most difficult question so far. If intelligence naturally leads to distance, how does one avoid becoming disconnected from humanity altogether? Is withdrawal the final stage, or merely a transition? Consider this carefully. Perhaps the purpose of solitude is not to escape others, but to understand them without illusion. Perhaps distance allows perspective, and perhaps true connection can only happen once illusions have fallen away. In the next and final part, we will confront the most uncomfortable conclusion of all: why accepting solitude may be the price of living truthfully, and how this acceptance can transform isolation into inner freedom. The final and most unsettling truth that Schopenhauer leaves us with is this: intelligence does not distance you from people by accident. It does so by necessity. Once illusions fall, they rarely return. And without illusions, much of social life loses its foundation. What remains is a choice that few are willing to face consciously. Either return to comforting falsehoods or accept solitude as the cost of clarity. Schopenhauer believed that most people are bonded not by truth, but by shared delusions. Optimism, identity, social roles, and collective narratives act as psychological glue. They soften reality and make existence tolerable. The intelligent individual, however, tends to see through these constructions. Not because they want to, but because they cannot unsee them. This makes full participation in social life increasingly difficult, sometimes impossible. This is where many misunderstand intelligent withdrawal. It is not misanthropy, it is not arrogance, it is grief. Grief for a version of connection that no longer feels honest. Grief for conversations that once seemed meaningful but now feel hollow. Grief for belonging that requires pretending not to know what you know. Psychology describes this as existential loneliness. It is not the absence of people, but the absence of resonance. You can be surrounded by others and still feel fundamentally alone if your inner world no longer aligns with the shared reality around you. For intelligent individuals, this misalignment often grows with age and awareness. Schopenhauer's harsh truth is that no amount of social success can compensate for inner dissonance. Applause does not quiet contradiction. Popularity does not resolve meaning, and companionship built on denial eventually collapses. In this sense, solitude becomes an ethical stance, a commitment to live without lying to oneself. But here is the transformation that few talk about. When solitude is accepted rather than resisted, it changes character. It stops feeling like exile and starts feeling like sovereignty. You are no longer waiting to be understood. You are no longer seeking validation. You are no longer bargaining your clarity for acceptance. You become internally anchored. This does not mean rejecting humanity. On the contrary, many intelligent individuals develop deeper compassion once they stop expecting others to meet them at the same level of awareness. You begin to see people not as disappointing, but as human, limited, afraid, coping in the only ways they know. Distance then becomes gentle, not bitter. Schopenhauer believed that peace comes not from changing the world, but from adjusting one's expectations of it. Expect less depth from the crowd. Expect less consistency from human behavior. Expect less meaning from social approval. And in doing so, you suffer less. Ask yourself this final question with brutal honesty. Are you lonely because you lack people, or because you refuse to abandon your inner truth to keep them? And if solitude protects that truth, is it really something to fear? The intelligent path is not easier. It offers no guarantees of happiness, but it offers something rarer: coherence. A life where your inner world and outer choices align, where silence is not emptiness, but space, where being alone is not a failure, but a form of integrity. Schopenhauer never promised comfort. He offered clarity, and clarity demands courage. The courage to stand apart without resentment, the courage to think without applause, the courage to accept that depth often walks a quieter road. Perhaps the goal was never to belong everywhere. Perhaps it was to belong fully to yourself. There is one final layer to this reflection that deserves attention, because it reframes everything that came before. When intelligent people step away from social life, they are often accused of being detached, cold, or emotionally distant. But what is rarely understood is that this distance is often born from excessive sensitivity, not a lack of it. The intelligent mind does not feel less. It feels more, and feeling more in a world that rarely slows down to process emotion can be overwhelming. Arthur Schopenhauer understood that awareness amplifies experience. Joy becomes sharper, but so does disappointment. Empathy becomes deeper, but so does disillusionment. When you perceive subtleties in tone, intention, and contradiction, social life can feel emotionally loud. Silence then becomes not emptiness, but relief. This explains why many intelligent individuals are not antisocial, but selectively social. They do not reject connection, they reject noise. They are not running away from people, they are protecting their inner equilibrium. A single honest conversation can mean more to them than 100 casual interactions. Quality replaces quantity. There is also a hidden strength in this withdrawal. Distance allows observation. Observation allows understanding. And understanding, when tempered with humility, can lead to wisdom. Many who walk this path eventually re-engage with the world, but differently. Less reactive, less needy, less invested in approval. They choose when to enter and when to remain silent. Perhaps this is the most balanced conclusion of all. Intelligence may pull you away from social life for a time, but not necessarily forever. Sometimes withdrawal is a season, not a sentence, a necessary pause to realign, to shed illusions, to learn how to be with others without losing yourself. So the question is no longer why intelligent people abandon social life, but what they return with if they choose to come back. If solitude teaches clarity, patience, and compassion, then distance was not a loss. It was preparation. And maybe the quietest lives are not empty at all. Maybe they are simply full in ways that cannot be seen from the outside. Thanks for looking.